What are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
It's us.
us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it, the fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome to Closing Gap Podcast, the truth about black wealth, where I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton.
Yes, sir.
How you doing today, brother?
Hey, blessed and highly favored.
Amen, amen. So we come today and try to give you a righteous and holy podcast, lead and guide you to take care of your finances, and we strive to tell you the truth about black wealth because we care about our listeners and we care about the public in general. And you are tuned in today at WATV 94.9 on your FM dial. Also, you find us on YouTube at Closing the Gap, the Truth, as well as anywhere that you may listen to streaming, get your streaming or listen to your podcast. You can look us up and find us at Closing the Gap, the Truth. Closing the Gap, the Truth, where we strive to tell you the truth about black wealth. Man, Wilbur, it's a lot going on, right? So as it always is, every day presents different challenges, different news cycles are going on, but we try to stay consistent.
Absolutely.
With what we do, what we strive to give to people. But also, people, we want to let you know that we are not immune to what you are going through and what you are facing. And so we know that many of us are in the middle of a storm.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's raining in some people's lives. And when it comes to finances, people may have heard, or if they have not, there's a such thing called a rainy day fund.
Absolutely.
All right? And there's this concept about always being prepared for a rainy day. And we say this, people oftentimes say this because in life, there are usually more sunny days or clear days than they are rainy days and stormy days.
Absolutely.
But the thing is, when storms come, they disrupt our normal flow.
Correct.
All right. And so we want to entitle the podcast today, Shelter in the Storm. Shelter in the Storm. We want you to be ready for your rainy day. Truth about life is, as I just stated, you're going to have better days than you have worse days. You're going to have more sunny days than you're going to have rainy days. You're going to have more days where your finances are doing well than you have where your finances are doing bad. You're going to be more comfortable at times. But the thing is, when that storm comes, are you ready? Will you be ready? Mm-hmm. So our goal here is to try to get you ready and give you the tools that you need to be ready financially in your life and then also spiritually in your life. Because the thing is, when rain comes, when storms come, we need the proper clothing, right? And so we also have to clothe ourselves spiritually and financially for stormy days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I say, trouble don't last always. Mm-hmm. The sun will come up tomorrow. So I think that's the biggest thing is to understand and, get to a mindset and a place in life where you understand that the rainy day is really an opportunity. Mm-hmm. Trouble is really, a mindset. It's how you perceive it. Like I said, we know nothing is going to go right for us all the time. Mm-hmm. There's going to be things that happen. There are going to be challenges and, trials and tribulations. The Bible has told us so. Yeah. But it's how you look at them, how you prepare for them. Mm-hmm. This is what my father told me, getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah. Being a former athlete and, playing, a sport that I chose, such as football. There are a lot of times in that football field, I was very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of licks that I felt that, were very painful and, I wanted to stop, but it's being able to push through, is getting comfortable being uncomfortable, comfortable fighting through and being optimistic about what the next play was going to bring, an opportunity to flip the script, so to speak. Yeah. So I think we have to, ground ourselves in the word because, first and foremost, that helps us to, start to look at opportunities instead of challenges. Mm-hmm. Looking at it and from a different perspective will help us to be better overall and keep us more level-headed. Mm-hmm. All of us, when we get overly emotional can make bad decisions.
Yeah.
And being able to stay calm in the middle of the storm and being able to, hear God and talk to God and have that conversation with him, not moving too hastily, but moving with a sense of purpose and with a sense of really opportunity of knowing that, this storm of challenge has been brought to me in my life. I get a chance to overcome this storm and learn from it and move forward. So I think that is probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned personally, in looking at storms as opportunities, is getting, count it all joy, as they say. In the good one. So you got to count it all joy. The same way we know we're going to have more good days than bad days, like the song says, I won't complain, so I want to make sure that I tend to, just reframe things from a visual perspective and look at all challenges in life as opportunities to get better. And as you grow, there are going to be different challenges. Challenges don't stop. They never stop. I mean, I don't care how old you get, there's going to be new challenges you're going to face. So the quicker you can get comfortable being uncomfortable and looking at challenges as opportunities, the better off you're going to be. And the more prepared you will become for the next challenge when it comes about. Because as we've gone through life, and of course we've all been young, and mama said, baby, save your money. Always put some away. Pay yourself first. And I can't speak for everybody else, but I've made the mistake of spending too much too soon and not making sure I put enough away for a rainy day. And all of a sudden that rainy day comes, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to weather the storm. And I'm down on my knees, twice as long, praying twice as hard. I say, Lord, please help me get out of this storm. When he said, look, I gave you the tools to prepare for the storm, so the storm would not be as worrisome as it is right now. So there was a lesson in the storm. So we got to learn to start taking and pulling out the message, that the messenger is giving us, when we go through these storms. So, being able to plan. And we've, talked about it since the top of the year. It's been, the theme of 2025 has been, writing the plan down and making it plain. And making sure that you're prepared as much as possible. Because obviously we know that life is going to always throw you a curveball. Things are going to happen and going to come up that we just couldn't have planned for. But if we've done some planning, it makes what comes up in life that much easier to deal with, because we don't know what's going to come up. It may be a health challenge. It could be a financial challenge. It could be a family challenge. We don't know what challenges are going to arise and what those challenges are going to require to get through them. But if I've done my part and I've made sure that I've saved for a rainy day and I've paid myself first and took 10% and gave to God, I've taken 10% and paid to a rainy day fund, and now I've allocated and I've paid my bills on time. I've been doing everything that I'm supposed to do. I haven't been frivolously spending. I created a budget. I'm tracking how much is coming in versus how much is going out. If I'm doing those things and preparing, like the ant we said in the episode before, preparing for the winter in the spring. So if I've done that, now I'm putting myself in position to now when that storm comes, I'm able to weather, and it's one less thing I got to worry about. Because if I have a hailstorm that comes about, well, now at least I plan financially, because guess what? It's going to be some doctor bills that come up that I probably weren't prepared for. But I don't have to worry about how we're going to pay the doctor bills if I've saved for a rainy day. I can just now focus on the health aspect of things, of what I need to do differently or better to get myself in a better position. So we just have to take that personal accountability, and it all starts with, of course, making sure we're right with Christ.
That is true, because getting right with Christ gives us the peace of mind that surpasses all understanding.
Absolutely.
Right? And when we're talking about a rainy day, and I appreciate you explaining to the people what rainy days look like, because sometimes we don't really evaluate it like that, right? We don't see, layoffs coming. We don't see those sicknesses coming. We don't see a crisis coming. We did not see the pandemic coming.
Absolutely.
Right. We don't a lot of times know how inflation is going to impact us and impact our finances. Correct. So these are the things that we're telling you today. These are the rainy day concepts. These are the storms that can come up in your life. Right. And many of them come unannounced. And too many times we try to predict things and try to time things. But what we need to realize, and the reason that we've been telling everyone to put a plan together and make it plain, write it and make it plain is that your preparation is better than trying to make a prediction.
Ooh.
Being prepared for something is better than trying to predict when something will happen.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about life is uncertainty is a certainty in life.
Absolutely.
Right? That things are going to change, but how well have you prepared yourself for these things? This is why we come here, right? We want to tell you the truth about Black wealth, and the truth of the matter is change will happen in your life. Everything is not going to go exactly how you plan it or how you predict it. But when you do have a plan, you're ready to make the adjustments to it, right? When God created the heavens and the earth,
Mm-hmm.
God had a specific plan that he had laid out for humankind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when Adam and Eve ate of the tree and violated their rule, the rule that God gave them, God, based on God's plan, he came down and made an adjustment to his plan, right? That was a storm, even for God, I would say, that while his plan was already laid out, then a storm came in where Adam and Eve violated. And as a result of that, God made an adjustment to his plan and still laid out a plan for success. Why? Because God being God, God being ready, right? This is the same concept that we need to take. We need to be like God. We are not God, but we need to take the example that God has laid out in the scripture to the things that God does and has done in the past. Prepare yourself more so than trying to predict what is going to happen.
You know, that's key. And, you know, it's funny because I deal with that on a day-to-day basis when I'm working with clients and, you know, talking, of course, with all the chaos that's happening in the market over the past, you know, say several months. And, you know, we have a lot of people that I try to call market timers. A lot of them call it the do-it-yourselfers. And everybody's trying to predict, when do I get back in the market? When do I get out of the market? Well, how much do I put in now? And I always ask them, okay, what's your plan? You know, because your plan will tell you when to get in and when to get out. But they don't have a plan, and they're trying to predict when the market is going to turn. Everybody's trying to predict, oh, when is the market going to turn around and take off? You know, have we hit the bottom just yet? You know, well, I'm predicting this stock is going to do this. Well, you know, Trump is signing these bills, and he's doing this with Elon Musk, and they're investing in this, and I'm going to try to time. I said, well, one thing we know about life is that, you know, the only person that's control the time is God. And God's time is not our time. You know, we operate in time, he doesn't. So that's why we never on the same accord, and things never happen when we want them. And that's why we have the old adage saying, he may not come when you want him, but he's always on time, because he's an on-time God. Yes, he is. So, you know, we know that he's going to be there for us, but at the same time, we can't predict when he's going to show up and show out. So he's given us the free will to be able to plan and prepare, so we can handle whatever comes our way. And we have to make sure that we're doing that and understanding that within our finances from a financial planner perspective, because I see too many people right now trying to time the market. And there's no such thing as timing the market. The greatest investors in the world, the guys that are on Wall Street, the guys are, you know, they're working at the New York Stock Exchange and all those different places. On average, the best of the best of the best, who have all the information and resources at their disposal, are right maybe 20 to 25% of the time. So if the people that have access to all the information are only right 20, 25% of the time, how do you think a person that doesn't have all the information is going to be able to predict accurately, consistently? Now, that don't mean you can't get lucky from time to time. We see that happen. And I meet people all the time. Well, I did great in the market. I traded my own portfolio, and I'm like, well, a dead clock is right twice a day too. So it doesn't mean that you were necessarily great. You just may have guessed correctly, or you see what happened when the market drops overall, and there's a 2008 drop, or there's a COVID drop, well, there like we had this year where the entire marketplace dropped. Well, anything you buy is going to recover because the entire market dropped. It was just one phase of the market that dropped. So, you know, understanding that, you know, a lot of people, they put too much credence on their own abilities and not understanding how to properly leverage information and access to the right opportunities. And the bigger piece of the puzzle is they haven't even identified what kind of opportunity they need to even be in. You know, like I said, we talk about it all the time. There's retirement and there's investment. Retirement is what I need to maintain my standard of living for the rest of my life. Investment is what I got left over after I've done that. Well, if you haven't created a plan where you know how much you can afford you need to be put into retirement and how much you can actually invest with, how do you know how to market time and when to get in and when to get out? You don't. So all too often we're guessing and we're playing a guessing game, and we have no full understanding of all the factors that are in play when it comes to making certain decisions. So we have to be very careful when we're trusting our own, intuition and knowledge, and not trusting actual professional help. And a lot of times, like I said, God is a professional when it comes to life.
Yeah.
He's given us all the answers that we need inside the good book. Well, it works the same way in finances. Unless you're a financial advisor, you got access to all the products, all the information, and you got access to all the resources and the people that actually do it on the day-to-day, managing billions and billions of dollars. If you don't have access to them, how can you know exactly what to do, when to do, and how to do? So this is why we always preach into our community, because we don't value that professional help enough.
Yeah.
We're always, trying to go, I call shade tree mechanic, and trying to, cut some corners and say, well, I don't want to pay for professional advice. I'm like, well, you either pay for professional advice or you're going to overpay for it once you cost yourself too much. Because what happens is most people, they go and try to do it themselves. Well, I don't want to pay a CPA. Well, I don't want to pay an attorney. I got a friend of a friend and they work for so-and-so, and, they're not necessarily an attorney, but they used to work for an attorney, so they know something, so they're going to help me. Well, you end up digging yourself a hole. Yeah. They get so deep that you ain't got no choice but to turn around and go hire a professional. Now then you got to pay double for your trouble. Well, we could have paid a whole lot less from the beginning by actually just working with a professional and getting it done right from the beginning. Because in life, if nothing else we've been shown in this country, you're going to get what you pay for.
Yeah. You definitely will. So if we're going to get ourselves prepared, the shelter in the storm, number one, we want everyone to realize that you have to first of all, keep the trust in God, the one that sees and knows all storms before they even come. That's number one. And spiritually, you have to be rooted and grounded with God. Secondly, that's spiritually having your soul anchored in the Lord and continuously doing that. And when you pray and tune in to God in that way, then God helps prepare you for what's going to come, even without you knowing that it's on the way, right? Similar to that, financially, that's pretty much what you do, Will, right? As a wealth manager, wealth advisor in his company, Hamilton Wealth Advisors, is to prepare you for the storm that is going to come, right? Based on who you are, what you have going on in your life financially, what's your family structure, what type of role and responsibility you have in your household. Then he puts together a plan that's specifically for you and what you have going on. How many kids you have, or if you don't have any kids, how much property do you own, or if you don't own any property, what's your desire for your future? Well, Mr. Hamilton strives to build you a shelter, a financial shelter. In the Bible, you have a soul shelter, a spiritual shelter that you can build up by reading the Word of God, praying, and putting your focus on God through Jesus Christ. You have a soul shelter. Financially, Mr. Hamilton will build you a financial shelter that will be able to take care of you and put a plan that's specified for you and what you have going on. Because this is the thing, it's going to rain, but the question is, are you ready? All right. And the worst thing that you can try to do is to build a shelter while the storm is going on. You need to build your shelter prior to the storm coming. There's a saying that came out as this quote, this saying that came about during the time that Silicon Valley was being built up, that they began to go into the tech market, that many of them during that time, they said that they were building an airplane in the air. That's a common quote around the tech. And I think that's what we try to do with our own personal lives. We try to build a shelter while the storm is going on. So when we come back from this break, we're going to try to give you some practical tools to help you build your shelter now. Now, There may be a storm going on in your life. We don't know, but whether it is or it isn't, we're going to give you some tools to try to build your shelter in the midst of the storm. Be back momentarily. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton. And you are tuned in once again at WATV 94.9 on your FM dial. Also on YouTube at Closing the Gap, The Truth. And anywhere where you get where you stream and listen to your podcast, you can find us at Closing the Gap Podcast. When this show, we are is entitled Shelter in the Storm. How to prepare yourself for the rainy day. We want you to be ready because the rain will come. But the question is, do you have your plan in place and shelter that when the storm comes, you are prepared? One of the worst things that can happen is to go outside when it's raining and don't have an umbrella, a raincoat, or some rain boots, or at least have a plan that says, hey, if it's raining, I know that I'm not leaving the house today. Because that's what the shelter is many times too, is that, hey, when the storms of life rage, where can I set myself up to be protected? So we told you on right before the break, we're going to give you some tools to get yourself prepared for your soul spiritually. And then also financially, we want you to be prepared to build your shelter in the midst of the storm. And the number one thing that I want to give them, Wilbur, is to know that God will be with you in the midst of the storm.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's key fact. God will be with you and is with you in everything that you do. I'm reminded of David in Psalm 23 when he said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Why? Because thou art with me. Right? Because God is with you. So that's first and foremost that everybody needs to realize, is that God is with you where you are. That God sees what you have going on in your life. And even if you are not truly tuned into God, serving God like you need to understand that God is with you. That's number one. In Isaiah chapter 41 and verse 10, God tells Isaiah, says, "Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed. I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. And I will uphold you with the right hand of my righteousness." That's calming for me, right? Is to know that no matter what I face, no matter what I go through, that I have a God that will be there with me, will give me the strength that I need when I'm worried. And so what we want to tell you all is that no matter what storm you may be in right now, or we want you to be prepared to have shelter for a storm will be coming in your life at some way, shape, or form, whether it's because of something that you've done or it's just something based on society, right? We have based on who is in the White House, who is in Congress, in the Senate, who is your mayor, who is your city council persons, who are the people that are over the county commission. All of these people can end up creating storms in your life too. Every storm that comes up in your life is not a result of something that you did. While that may be true that sometimes you can create your own storm, but then also there are storms that happen in your life that had nothing to do with what you did personally. It's just based on the surroundings that we have, right? So that's number one, is we want you to know that God is with you. And how do you keep yourself settled in that? Well, you have to have a prayer life. What you said it earlier, sometimes you get on based on what's going on, and it really determines how long you're going to be praying that day, right? And so, but the thing is, you had a relationship.
Absolutely.
And that's key, is that you know that God is with you. You believe that God hears you. And so the fact that you believe that God hears you, you're willing to pray and talk to God about the storm that you have going on in your life,
Absolutely.
or whatever it is that you're facing, so that you can have peace that surpasses all understanding, so that you don't have to be anxious for anything, but that you can continue to just trust God. So that's number one, is that you need to have that in place. Number two, you need to, in doing that, what that'll help you have is faith over fear.
Mm.
What did you tell last night about prayer, Will? But how praying and worrying.
So they say you either pray or you can worry, but you can't do both.
Can't do
You
both.
gotta pick one. You gotta pick one. And it's just ironic. I think I feel like in life we tend to give people too much credit for how we feeling and how we doing.
Mm.
And I've learned that the closer I get to Christ, the less everybody else matters when it comes to my individual well-being and my personal mood and my goals, dreams, and objectives. Because I've learned that where I used to get mad and upset with people, you grow to a place where I understand that people that will despitefully use you, God is really using them to perfect you. So I grew to a place where now when I see someone say try to do something purposely harmful or try to block your blessing, or they, like I say, try to block your blessing, because they can't block it. Because what God got for you is for you. So, but I grew to a place where I learned and said, and I used to get mad and upset with people or situations because I thought it was holding me back or deterring me. And really the whole time it was God getting my attention saying, look, the devil is using them to stop you from getting where I want you to go. So once I changed my perspective, like we talked about before, it's perspective and how we view things. And I listened to God, and God said, look, the devil is just using them. So don't get upset with them, because they don't even understand and know what they're doing, because they're not right where they need to be with me. Once they get themselves together with me, there will no longer be an issue for you. But also understanding that if you're trying to do right, as you build your relationship with Christ, you hear people say it all the time when they start coming to church and they start trying to get themselves together. And you're like, man, everything starts going wrong when I try to do right.
Yeah.
I just feel like everything starts trying to go wrong. I'm trying to do right, and I feel like more is going wrong. Well, all that is just God getting your attention, just letting you know. And also, you've also waking up the devil. See, I'm very wary of people that tell me they have no storms in their life. Because if you don't have no storms in your life, that means the devil might already have you. Because if you're a threat to the devil, and if you're doing God's work and trying to build his kingdom, that means you're a threat to him. And he's going to try to stop, hurt, and harm, because, of course, we know the devil is here to kill, steal, and destroy. So if we know that, and we're trying to uplift and build God's kingdom, we got to expect some adversity is going to come. There's going to be some adversaries on the other side that don't want to see us accomplish what God has for us. So once I started to look at life a little bit differently, and I had a change in perspective, when people would try and do things to slow down my progress, I wouldn't get upset with those people. I would simply look at them and say, you know what? I know you don't understand what's their playbook. The devil just using you to stop me from getting where I got to go. So I'm not going to hold it against you. I'm going to use that to be the bigger person and keep doing what God has called me to do, because at some point in time, all things work together for good. That those that love the Lord are called according to his purpose. So it's all about perspective, but I can't have that perspective if I don't have the relationship and I'm not spending that quality time like we're talking about now. So I'm not doing the meditation and the prayer and talking to God in the morning. So when I wake up and I have my alarm set 7:45 a.m., automatically my Bible app pops up on my phone, quiet time. I have another one that goes off at midday at 12 p.m., prayer time. I have another one that goes off at 9 p.m. at night. So there are plenty of times when I'm working throughout the day and I may be in meetings during those times. And I don't have the opportunity to stop and do the quiet time. And I just say, Lord, thank you. I will at least acknowledge him in that moment and say, okay, well, as soon as I get a moment, we're going to come back to having that conversation, or we're going to have a quick moment when I'm in the car headed to the next meeting or the next appointment, whatever it is I may be doing. Because, of course, we all know we have busy schedules from time to time, and some days are busier than others. So, you know, the purpose of having that plan And that routine is to give you a sense of normalcy and to give you a sense of consistency.
Yeah.
So when I'm telling my clients all the time when it comes to their finances, I say, look here, consistently doing the right thing over a long period of time is what's going to give us success. We can't pray today and don't pray no more for the next 6 months and think that we're going to have a breakthrough in our life. You know, they've had done many studies that said you got to do something at least 21 days in a row in order to either break a habit or create a new habit. So we got to be consistent in well doing. We got to be consistent in making sure we have that quality time so we can give it a chance to work and give God a chance to see that we're serious about coming to him. Because God is watching us too.
Yeah.
God is saying, look, I know you call me when you need me because you've been calling me when you need me your whole life. And I've been showing up most of the time when you needed me. But I don't want you to use me like a genie in a bottle and not just rubbing on me when it's convenient for you. I want you to come to me when it's not convenient. I want you to come to me consistently. Are you coming to me when everything is good? You know, because we all get down on our knees with everything going wrong. When things goes wrong and stuff starts going bad and haywire, we all, Lord, help me. Lord, come save me. Lord, I need you. But it's those times when we're comfortable, when he's giving us the blessing. Are you still remembering to give him the thanks and the glory while you're being blessed?
Yeah.
Because you'll say thank you for the blessing initially, but as a couple of days go by, and I think we've all been there, and things are going right, the more comfortable and good you are, the less most people come to Christ. Because at that moment, you feel like, I don't necessarily need you right now, Lord. I'll come back to you when the next crisis happens. And Lord saying, no, I need you all the time.
Yeah.
I want you to stay with me all the time because guess what? This time is what's going to prepare you to handle the next time because we always know a new level, new devil. So understanding that we got to prepare ourselves in the process, the same way we have that financial plan that we got to stick to, we got to create that spiritual plan to make sure that we're staying on one accord with him, that we're building that relationship. And I'm thankful that I have a relationship at this particular point in time in my life where even if I'm off schedule, when it comes to my day-to-day routine, I'm still on schedule with him.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So what grounds you when all else shakes is what we want you to think, right? What's your foundation? You know, everything needs to have a firm foundation. You need to have a firm foundation in your life, spiritually, number one, because storms are the shaky times. So, but if you're sturdy on Christ, in Christ, then nothing is going to be able to move you because he's going to be there with you and you have that relationship there. So segueing from that, Wilbert, that's where we need to be spiritually. Now, financially, when we're dealing with the storms, what is the firm foundation that we need to establish financially for a storm?
We know it's always funny because in most times in life, we plan for what we hope to happen more than what we know is going to happen. And if we start talking about storms, and we had, unfortunately, some bad storms, there's time with storms where people lose their lives, you know, whether it be tornadoes, and we've seen, you know, all kind of, you know, earthquakes happen around the world and fires. We've had a number of fires here in the United States here, you know, in the past few months and things of that nature. And, you know, so storms are going to come and they're varying degrees of storms, you know, but the biggest storm that can happen is a storm that costs somebody their life, you know, and so we always start with the foundation of any solid financial plan is making sure that you got some insurance coverage. Because like I said, we all we want to save money and plan for retirement, live happily ever after. And, you know, that's my goal. I tell the Lord every day, 90 happy and healthy. I speak it into existence on a consistent basis. But if the Lord has a different plan, your family still has needs that need to be met. There's still bills that have to be paid, regardless of whether you're here in life. So, you know, having a storm that's going to come is making sure that you have a solid foundation, and insurance protection is the baseline, is the foundation of any solid financial plan. Because if I plan on saving $300 a month for the next 30 years and God calls me home prior to that and I don't get a chance to save, so me and my wife was planning on using this to live in retirement. Well, all of a sudden, that's not there. Does my wife still not need money to retire? Does my family still not need money to pay the bills? So because the biggest loss when a major storm happens is the loss of income. You know, if you're no longer here and a storm takes you off this earth, your family is going to lose the loss of income that you're producing. So if you're producing $50,000 a year and you have a child that's, let's just say a 8-year-old child.
Yeah.
Well, that child is going to be in the house. We know at a mandatory minimum of at least the next 10 years. And that's saying that if that's just through high school. That's not talking about college and beyond. We'll just say the mandatory minimum of 10 years. Well, if we look at 50,000 over 10 years, that's $500,000.
Yeah.
Do you have the right insurance protection to cover? Because your wife is still going to have power bill, water bill, gas bill, homeowners insurance, car insurance, clothes, food, school trips, all these things that come along with life that we tend to take for granted.
Yeah.
But these things have to be taken care of with or without you. We want to make sure that we take care of those things and we make sure that we've covered that with or without you being here. So that's the solid foundation we want to be in, and making sure we have that from an insurance protection standpoint, because unfortunately our community is way too underinsured. We think, well, I have a $50,000 policy, or I have a $100,000 policy. Well, if you got a $100,000 policy and you make $50,000 a year, well, it only carries your family for 2 years. Is that going to be sufficient? So that is the baseline of what we need to be addressing first and foremost when we look at, okay, are all the storms being addressed? The next phase of that, of course, is what we talk about is we got to have some emergency reserves, because we know storms are going to happen.
Okay.
I had a mini storm
Okay.
where I had a rock hit a windshield, and I had to take that car and I had to call the dealership and say, hey, you know what? I got to replace the windshield. And the price they gave me for that windshield, it felt like a big storm. So I got to get a windshield replaced. I have to have some emergency reserves in place and some savings to cover those incidental items, those small storms that's going to happen. That we call that summer rain. Those are the frequent storms that we see. I call them the summer rain storms, where they pop up and they here today and they gone tomorrow, but you still have to deal with them. You still got wet. So you still need to dry off, and because you wasn't prepared for that storm. So that's when the air conditioner goes out in the house, and you got to replace it with a new pump or a new compressor or something. You have the flat tire that happens when you got to go and get a new tire that you wasn't expecting, and you got to pay for a tow. So those summer rains is what I call them. You have to be prepared for, and that's where us doing the consistent thing of making sure that we're saving and we keep at least 3 to 6 months of those emergency reserves in place for those summer rains. So when they happen, they don't disrupt the entire financial plan, because we should have a financial plan where we're putting money away for retirement. We're saving some and we're paying ourselves, for the future, just for incidentals. And then we are planning for those emergency summer rains, so to speak. So I shouldn't have to go into my retirement bucket to cover a summer rain incidental. And that way my investment plan can continue to focus and function the way it was entitled to, because it's more for a long-term perspective, because every dollar that we get has a function. Okay. We talk about, of course, how we invest money when it comes in, and I talk about the time horizon, when we need to utilize that money. And that determines kind of how aggressive or conservative we need to be when it comes to investing those funds. So we have to have that emergency reserves, those 3 to 6 months, and that allows us to be flexible, and be consistent in kind of what we're doing.
Got it. Okay, that's good. So having that insurance, having that layout plan, also getting those reserves in place. When it comes to our expenses, I know, we are an emotional people.
Absolutely.
Right? And even though, I heard you earlier, talk about making decisions off emotions, we really don't need to do that. The fact of the matter is we do.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So
I absolutely do.
So, and although we need to change some of that nature within ourselves and within the community, the truth about Black Wealth is we're still going to make some emotional decisions. Absolutely. Right? We base things off of our happiness, so to speak. So how can what would you say to somebody that says, hey, look, I still need my happiness. I still need my joy. Like how does that person prepare themselves for the storm? Like, how can we be ready for the storm without sitting in the midst of the shelter, feeling sad, feeling bad, and our countenance is down, right?
Yeah.
Being sad, but still being able to smile in the midst of the storm financially?
Well, first and foremost, if you ain't got a relationship with Christ, it ain't gonna happen. So we got to have that first and foremost. So yeah, I'm one of the people. I don't believe in necessarily cold turkey, but I do understand and I do know that too much of anything can be a bad thing.
Okay.
So being overly emotional can get you in a lot of trouble, but also not treating yourself. Because when you do things the right way and when you have a plan, we build into our plans. When I'm working with a client, we build their happiness into the plan. So if you have a desire where you want to travel, well, let's build that into your retirement plan. Let's build it into your life financial plan. So we know, hey, we're going to allocate X amount of dollars every year into you traveling. So if you want to, travel once every 6 months, if you're a person where I'm a sneakerhead, my first job in life was Foot Locker. So I've been buying sneakers and Jordans since 1988. I'd had every pair ever come out. So for me, I build that into my budget. So I understand that, guess what? If I'm going to overspend here, then I need to underspend somewhere else. So I got to make some cuts and some sacrifices somewhere in order to give myself some rewards over here. And we'll be right back after this break.
Welcome back to Closing the Gap podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And you are tuned in to WATV 94.9 on your FM dial, also on YouTube at Closing the Gap, The Truth, as well as anywhere that you listen to your streaming podcast. You find us at Closing the Gap Podcast, where we strive to tell you the truth about black wealth. And in the last segment, we were just talking about emotional and joy and happiness, and you were talking about how you like to put that into the plan for people, right? And I think that's very important because oftentimes when it comes to our finances, our mindset is more about, scarcity over stewardship.
Correct.
Right? We are more worried about, okay, well, if I have to go on this savings plan, and that means I got to cut back on something, and we tend to start getting sad about it. But I like what you said, that say, hey, look, you have certain things that bring you joy, then we're going to try to make sure that we put those things in place. Absolutely. You can still have those joys of life in the midst of what you're going through, right? And in preparing yourself for the future. So, and I think that that's very important. And then spiritually, oftentimes people feel like if I turn my life all the way over to Christ and start living my life by the way that God designed it in the Bible, that I won't be able to have fun, that I won't be able to have joy, right? Well, most times it's because we have thought that sinfulness is more joyous than actually salvation is and righteousness is. But when you really get into the word and you start living righteously, you realize that that peace that surpasses all understanding provides more joy for you than living in a life of sin where you're ducking and dodging and hiding from people, and you had 2 or 3 women or 2 or 3 men you're messing with, and now you got to tell these lies to cover up this lie and then tell another lie to cover up another one, right? Don't realize that when you back away from those things and you're able to actually rest at night,
oh man,
without having to go through those things like that, man, that alone gives you an emotional high and provides a lot of joy to you.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a peace that surpasses all understanding. There, I know some of y'all know what we're talking about here, because we don't the ones that we've been saved for a while, but not the whole time. So we definitely understand that.
Right. Yeah. So we want you, a lot of those storms, right, were storms that we created ourselves.
Exactly.
And we couldn't find any shelter. There was nowhere to run.
Nowhere to run.
You had to face it. And so now we're not in those places, and we want others to get out of those places and realize that, hey, having a good financial plan does not mean that you won't still be able to enjoy yourself. Having a life of righteousness and holiness through Jesus Christ and relationship with God does not mean that all the joy will be lost. But too many times these types of thoughts happen because we have put our trust in too many other people,
yes,
and other things, and that's where we base our lives at, right?
Absolutely.
I want to talk about this Pew Research article that came out, and the title of this one was saying that the growing share of U.S. adults now in 2025 say they feel that their personal finances will be worse a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
And that article, or this article that we're referring to, really speaks to the emotional value of life, right? Speaks to a fear over faith type of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks antithetically to having a plan that you're prepared for anything that happens.
Absolutely.
Right. And in that article, and something I want to talk about is it talked about Democrats and Republicans, and we know that everybody's not a Democrat or Republican, but I think it's telling that right now this article said that Republicans feel more optimistic about their finances for the upcoming year versus Democrats feel more pessimistic about their finances for the upcoming year. And what that says is that the people that they have done the research on in this article have based their lives on who is the president and who is in office at that current time.
Correct.
And that's what provides them the comfort. And that's why we come to you all on a weekly basis is, number one, that don't define your life based on who is elected into a political office. It's one of the worst things that you can do, right? We encourage everyone to vote. Vote for who you feel should be in an office, no matter, and then who that is. And then if that person does not win, don't base your whole life on the fact of that person winning. Like you said earlier, we tend to base our lives and live our lives more off of predictions, you know what I'm saying, than fact. More off of what we hope will happen than off of the reality of what will happen.
Yes.
And that's what I think this article speaks to, is that many people have based their whole lives on the fact of Donald Trump becoming president. Or then vice versa, other people, they feel pessimistic because now Donald Trump is president. And so sometimes we create storms in our mind or create false optimism in our minds based on people that are here, more so than basing it on God and Christ and on facts.
Well, you know, all too often, I mean, you know, we say this all the time. I definitely feel it, you know, first and foremost, we give people way too much power, control, and influence over how we're doing and how we're feeling. There's no one person, there's no one political party that can really affect you that much on a day-to-day basis. Especially not if you're rooted in Christ. If you're rooted in Christ, you really ain't worried about who goes into office because you know who really in charge anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, you know, when Donald Trump was going into office and me having the relationship that I have with Christ, especially now, you know, I look at every situation as an opportunity. And, you know, we talked about this, you know, early on in the year when he was going into office, the things that were going to happen. You know, he announced, you know, the potential tariffs. He announced the potential, you know, pullbacks and drawbacks and implementations that he was going to make and try to make. Now, obviously, all of them haven't come to pass. You know, some of them have, some of them haven't. But, you know, there's really nothing new that he presented that we didn't know he was going to present prior to him going in. You know, we heard about Project 2025 well before. You know, this, you know, he actually went into office and things went into effect. So I think we give, and I hear too many people talk about it in various platforms and places and worrying about what Donald Trump has said today, what he's doing tomorrow, and they haven't done anything for themselves in the meantime. You know, have you started the conversation and addressed the elephant in the room, which is the person you're staring in the mirror? You know, so until you know, address and confront yourself, you know, nothing else is really going to matter. And a lot of times I think we end up focusing on what's going on around us because we don't want to face the elephant in the room, which is you. See, we all like to, you know, glance at what's going wrong here and there because it's easier, they say, to point out somebody else's flaws than to look in the mirror and kind of fix your own. You know, it's always say you can easily identify what's going on in somebody else's relationship, but you can't fix what's going on in yours. So, you know, you have to take some personal accountability, and it all starts there. You know, whether it's your spiritual relationship, your financial, you know, success. You know, we all talked about, like I say, you know, making sure that we plan for the worst and then hope for the best. Like I said, I don't believe in going cold turkey. I want you to enjoy yourself and enjoy your life. I'm going to enjoy mine.
Yeah.
There's some things that I'm going to do. There's some so-called, I guess, habits, as you would say, that I have, that things that I enjoy treating myself and my family to, that I'm going to do. But you know what, also that I understand that it means that I may need to work twice as hard to make sure I'm bringing in enough revenue to make sure that me and my family can enjoy what comes with that. That means I have to sacrifice some time. That means I have to sacrifice some sleep. That means I have to sacrifice maybe some personal indulgences in other areas. So for me, because I like shoes, for example, I don't drink and I don't smoke. So the money that some people spend on drinking and smoking, I spend it on shoes. Everybody has something different that they are enticed by or that they infatuated with. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's all in moderation. It's, too much of any one thing can be a bad thing. But if we build it into our plan and we're making sure that we're taking care of the needs first and then the wants second. So the shoes don't come before the rent. The car don't come, before the insurance. These things are paid first. I got to make sure that the necessities are taken care of. And then as I build and as I go and as I grow, I can purchase some of those wants that I have that come along with just we all having in life and our own personal preferences and what we like. But we just have to, we don't want to face the music, so to speak. We don't want to face the firing squad, and we don't want to take the constructive criticism that comes with getting our lives together, because we are going to have to take some criticism in some way, shape, form, or fashion. You're going to have to sit down with someone. They're going to have to tell you, you know what, you're not doing the best you can in this area. You're not doing well here. You need to make some changes there. And it's hurtful in some ways for somebody to kind of call you out. And you're like, man, I kind of got it all together. I don't like people calling out my mistakes. But we all have them. Which is why I have business coaches, which is why I have, CPAs and business managers and people I talk to that can help me in various areas. And I have to, they look at my situation, they look at the finances and the revenue and the books, and they say, well, hey, we got to do a little bit better here. We got to tighten up over there, or we need to make these adjustments here. And I have to make sure that I bite the bullet and say, you know what, man, I planned on buying a new suit, but I got to wait because I got to take care of X, Y, Z first. Now, that don't mean I'm not going to ever be able to buy a new suit, but it just means maybe not right now. I may need to make the correction adjustment they're telling me I need to make, and that's going to put me in a position to buy 10 new suits. So understanding that, guess what? Delayed don't mean denied. And I think when we talked about earlier, mentioned that, sometimes we have that misconception of when we're enjoying the world too much, we think coming to God is going to kill all the fun. And when you realize, when you finally get with God, you realize that you can have more fun because you can have fun with peace of mind. So now because you know that, hey, man, I got blessings that he's opened up a door that I don't have room enough to receive. So I'm getting more now than I ever got then. My life is so much easier now than it was prior to me being in lockstep and key with Christ. So I'm looking to get more in tune with him because I want to maximize out what he wouldn't give me. I want that what we call undeserved favor. I want to wake up and have blessings that I don't have room enough to receive. I want those blessings to pour over to my sons and wife and to my family members, to my clients that I work with. I want them to be the recipient and beneficiary of the blessings that I receive. But I can only make sure I get that if I'm staying in lockstep and key with him and make sure that I come to him. Because if I don't come to Christ, he doesn't bless me and allow my gift to open up to be a blessing to somebody else. And I think that's where, we can tend to kind of miss the boat. And because we're always hesitant to fully commit. It's always that, hey, Lord, I want to come, but I don't know if I can quite give up that right there. Like that one piece right there. There's always something that's kind of holding us back. And until you give that thing up, you will not receive the full blessing of what God wants to give you. And understanding that is really me learning to have the optimism and changing that mindset and that perception that we talked about earlier. It's having a perception of there's going to always be greater later. And this is not the best. The best is always yet to come. So as good as my life has been now, I know there's so much better on the way, because as long as I stay with him and I continue to try to grow in him, and that don't mean you're perfect. That don't mean you don't make mistakes, because we're always going to make mistakes and fall short. But it's making those mistakes with the right intentions, with the right heart, that he'll turn around and say, you know what, that mistake wasn't a mistake. It was a lesson that you're going to learn from to prepare for the blessing I'm getting ready to give you. So we just have to do, I think, a better job of really facing the music personally in order to take that next step. And that will in turn allow us to prepare for what's to come, but also it'll help us to avoid panicking in times when the storm seems insurmountable, because we've all had times and have situations come up in life where we're like, Lord, I don't know how to get out. I don't know how I'm gonna get out of this one. Well, guess what? It's that your thoughts ain't my thoughts and your ways are my ways. Don't worry about how I'm gonna get you out of the mess that you created. Just trust that I can. And if you trust that I can, then guess what? He will.
Right. And that's why we entitled it with Shelter in the Storm. Because many times it's not about getting out of the storm. It's about who's going to be with you while the storm is going on. It's about having the shelter that when the storm is going on, I have a God that is present with me. It means that I have everything prepared that while I'm going through it, while it is happening, I'm not worried about moving, right? I'm not concerned about that, right? But I had an art of delayed gratification. You see, when you want instant gratification, you're trying to hurry up and get out of the storm, right? Because it's like, okay, the storm is happening. What's the quickest way that I can get out? I can make an exit. Well, when you have shelter in the storm, you're not concerned about getting out because you already knew that the storm was going to come, right? Of course, you want the storm to end, but you're not as concerned about it ending because you already knew it was coming. So you had your plan in place. You got your preparation pack in place. You got your faith rooted and grounded in God and through Jesus Christ, right? You have your rainy day fund, your 3 to 6 months for finances. You have your insurance thing set up that even if you get sick or anything happens, I got my finances laid out, right? So now the storm has come and it's like, oh man, the storm has happened. Oh, you know what? I was ready for this.
Absolutely.
So now I get on my knees and I give God thanks and praise that, hey, when the times were good, I prepared myself, right? Just like Noah. Noah in the Bible, Noah built the ark while it was sunny and hadn't rained.
Yes.
Everybody around him looked at him like, man, why are you building this ark right now? And we hadn't had any rain. He said, hey, look, the Lord has already told me that it's going to be a great rain that's coming. I've received my directions. I've received the plan because God gave him the plan for what size the ark needed to be, what type of wood it needed to be, and how he needed to construct it. And he followed the plan to a T, to the point that when the storm came, he wasn't concerned about the storm. All he did was go and get all of the animals that God told him to get, put everything on the ark, and then boom, he was prepared. So that's the same thing for us now, is the art of delayed gratification, not being concerned about the storm, but knowing that I have a God that's with me, knowing that I have a God that will be with me and lead me beside still waters, as David says in Psalm 23. I have a God that will prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. As you said earlier, those adversaries that come up against you, right? That I'm going to still sit down and eat. I'm going to still be able to feast, even though my adversaries are before me and they are trying to destroy me and derail me off of my plan, right? I'm not concerned about it because I have a God that is bigger than that. I have a God that is present with me in the midst of this situation. And I'm not concerned about whether Joe Biden was in office. I'm not concerned about whether Donald Trump was in office. I'm not concerned about whether which Bush was in office or who's going to come in office next. I'm not as concerned, although I'm going to engage in it. I'm not as concerned about it because that doesn't dictate my life.
Absolutely.
Because what dictates my life is my God. And I have sat down with a financial planner, advisor like yourself, and I put together a plan. God has led me to the right person to put together my financial plan. And I'm ready, right? And then now we pass that on to our kids as well, and we teach them. And then also what happens in that is it ends up making us separate from other people too.
Absolutely.
You know, we end up creating a different circle.
Absolutely.
When you start I don't know about many of the listeners, but I know as I begin to grow in different spaces and places, that God will end up putting me around various people that will enhance my growth,
Absolutely.
and vice versa. That they tell me that I've helped them also, right? Where Scripture says, "Iron sharpens iron." When we start preparing ourselves with Christ for the storms, God will put the right people around us so that we can do the things that we need to do to bring Him glory and to do His will. So when we're talking about being shelter in the storm, we want you to root and ground yourself in faith with God in Jesus Christ. We want you to know that make sure that you have that firm foundation with Him. Have faith over fear. Know that preparation is an act of hope and not of fear, right? Do these things in Christ and you will be prepared. Any last words from you, Will?
Well, I would definitely say we all had and witnessed the pandemic that happened less than 5 years ago. But if that was to happen again, are you prepared? If not, give us a call.